The Baghdad Battery. Hidden in a museum drawer in Iraq, what looked like an ordinary clay jar once rewrote the boundaries of ancient science. Inside the jar was a copper cylinder, sealed with asphalt and containing a corroded iron rod. When reconstructed by scientists in the 1930s, the strange device generated an electrical current thousands of years before Benjamin Franklin ever dreamed of lightning rods. It became known as the Baghdad Battery. What could ancient people have possibly used electricity for? Some suggested electroplating gold onto silver artifacts. Others proposed medicinal shocks, or even a primitive power source for sacred rituals. The pattern of precision in its design, insulated layers, conductive metals, and chemical residues of acidic liquids, was too deliberate to be accidental. Yet, instead of celebrating it as proof of advanced ancient engineering, authorities labeled it a mystery object, locked it away, and rarely allowed public discussion. The implications were catastrophic to the accepted timeline. If Mesopotamians harnessed electricity 2,000 years before Christ, then everything about modern invention collapses. Museum officials quietly removed public access to the battery after political turmoil in Iraq made it a target of looting. Some say it was taken by private collectors. Others whisper it was confiscated by intelligence agencies under cultural protection orders. What is certain is that replicas have been built and tested, and they work. A simple lemon juice electrolyte can make it hum to life. If humanity truly rediscovered electricity in the 18th century, why did someone else already know it in 250 BC? The Baghdad Battery isn't just an artifact. It's a spark from a forgotten civilization that dared to light up the dark, only to be buried again under the sands of time. The Antikythera mechanism. In 1901, sponge divers off the coast of the Greek island Antikythera stumbled upon a sunken shipwreck filled with statues, coins, and one object that made no sense: a corroded lump of bronze gears fused together by centuries underwater. When X-rays later revealed its internal structure, scientists froze. Inside the encrusted mass lay more than 30 precisely cut bronze gears, teeth meshing perfectly, ratios calibrated to astronomical cycles. The Antikythera mechanism was, in every sense, a 2,000-year-old analog computer. It tracked the motion of the sun, moon, and planets. It predicted eclipses. It even modeled the irregular orbit of the moon, a level of mathematical sophistication not seen again until modern clockwork appeared in Europe more than 1,400 years later. This was not a relic of simple artisans. It was evidence of scientific genius operating in total secrecy or lost to catastrophe. Researchers like Derek de Sola Price, who studied it in the 1950s, found inscriptions suggesting it was designed around 150 to 100 BC, possibly by a follower of Archimedes. But the implications were too disruptive. It proved the ancient Greeks had mechanical precision comparable to the 18th century. Overnight, the artifact turned history into fiction. Institutions quietly reframed it as a unique anomaly, something brilliant yet isolated. But precision engineering like that cannot exist in isolation. Someone taught it, someone built it, someone funded it. Modern replicas built using 3D scans work flawlessly, tracking celestial movements with eerie accuracy. Still, most textbooks mention it only as a curiosity. The mechanism sits behind glass in the National Archaeological Museum of Athens, treated less as proof of forgotten mastery and more as a puzzle too dangerous to answer. If ancient Greece could compute the cosmos, then what else have we buried beneath centuries of disbelief? The Antikythera mechanism didn't just measure time, it may have measured how far we've fallen from what we once were. The Piri Reis map. In 1513, a Turkish admiral named Piri Reis compiled a map unlike anything else from his time. Drawn on gazelle skin and signed with his own hand, it displayed the coastlines of South America and Antarctica centuries before either was officially discovered. Even more disturbing, the map's southern edge showed Antarctica's coast without ice, drawn with precise mountain ridges and river valleys that modern radar surveys beneath the ice sheet later confirmed to be accurate. Whoever created the source charts that Piri Reis copied from had access to global geography that should have been impossible for any civilization of the 16th century or the 15th, or even the 10th. Reis himself wrote notes in the margins, explaining that he compiled his chart from ancient maps of long-lost origin, documents he claimed traced back to Alexander the Great, and even to maps drawn in the time of the pharaohs. Historians dismissed those remarks as superstition until modern analysts examined the geometry. The coastlines were projected using a spherical trigonometric grid that only became mathematically feasible after the invention of precision navigation instruments in the 20th century. Yet there it was, 500 years earlier, in brown ink and faded red pigment. The artifact was quietly archived in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul. During the Cold War, a U.S. Navy cartographic team analyzed it and issued an internal report stating that the geographical detail on the Piri Reis map is in many respects beyond the present state of knowledge. Soon after, discussion of that report vanished from public channels. Access to the original was restricted, and reproductions were limited to partial photographs. If the southern continents were known in deep antiquity, it means human exploration reached the poles before recorded history. It means the age of discovery was not the first, but the second. The Piri Reis map suggests that someone, somewhere charted the entire planet long before our civilization remembered how, and perhaps that memory was deliberately erased along with the world it once described. The London Hammer. In 1936, a group of hikers near London, Texas, stumbled upon a rock formation split open by erosion. Embedded deep inside the stone was something that defied every law of history: a hammer. Its wooden handle was petrified, its metal head encased in 400-million-year-old rock. Laboratory tests later confirmed that the surrounding limestone dated to the early Paleozoic era, long before even dinosaurs walked the earth. The artifact became known as the London Hammer, and for decades it's remained one of the most unnerving pieces of evidence that human technology might predate humanity itself. The hammer's head is made of an iron alloy so pure it baffles metallurgists: 96% iron, 2.6% chlorine, and 0.74% sulfur, with no detectable carbon. Modern smelting techniques can't easily reproduce that purity without advanced vacuum technology. The handle, though fossilized, still shows traces of cellular structure and mineral intrusion that could only occur over immense geological timescales. So how did a tool from a civilization that should not exist end up entombed inside ancient rock? Scientists attempted to dismiss it as a coincidence, a modern hammer that somehow got trapped in a concretion of minerals. But the geological evidence didn't agree. The surrounding nodule was not a surface deposit. It had formed under intense pressure far below ground, later exposed through uplift and erosion. Photos taken before its extraction show that the object was fully enclosed. Yet when creationist researchers tried to study it, the sample was quickly seized by private collectors. Rumors followed of government interest, of the artifact being bought and sealed away in a vault, of attempts to discredit the original finders. If real, the London Hammer rewrites everything we know about human origin. It implies either that technology existed in prehistoric epochs long before our species, or that the cycles of civilization stretch back far beyond our recorded memory. A hammer built by hands that history refuses to acknowledge, one that should not exist, yet does. The Saqqara bird. In 1898, during an excavation in Saqqara, Egypt, archaeologist Khalil Messia unearthed a small wooden object buried among ancient tomb offerings. At first glance, it resembled a bird: delicate wings, tail feathers, and an elegant beak, but its shape was unlike any other Egyptian carving. The tail was vertical like a rudder, the wings were shaped for lift, and on its underside was a small slot, perfectly sized to mount on a launching stick. When aerodynamics experts studied it in the 1960s, they came to a shocking realization: the Saqqara bird was not a toy, idol, or ornament. It was an ancient glider. Scaled replicas built by engineers demonstrated stable flight patterns. Some could even glide for dozens of meters when launched by hand. The proportions matched modern aircraft design almost exactly: dihedral wings, a fuselage-like body, and a vertical stabilizer. But that final detail, the vertical tail, did not exist in known aviation history until 1903, the year of the Wright brothers' first flight. Yet the Saqqara bird was carved nearly 2,000 years earlier. Egyptologists were quick to call it coincidence, labeling it a ritual object. But when Messiah petitioned the Cairo Museum to test aerodynamic models officially, he was denied. The artifact was quietly removed from display and placed in storage for decades. Requests for high-resolution imaging or residue testing were refused, with officials citing preservation concerns. The silence only deepened the mystery. If the Saqqara bird truly represents an understanding of flight, it means ancient Egyptians may have known aerodynamic principles millennia before modern science. Its discovery challenges the linear model of technological evolution, suggesting that knowledge can rise, vanish, and rise again. Perhaps this small wooden glider was a symbolic memory of something even older, a civilization that once took to the skies before the desert reclaimed its secrets. Today, the Saqqara bird sits locked away, its wings clipped not by time but by human denial. The Dendera light. Deep beneath the Temple of Hathor in Dendera, Egypt, carved into the ancient stone walls, lies a relief that has baffled historians for decades. It shows figures holding what appear to be large glass bulbs, each connected by a thick cable to a box-like structure adorned with a serpent coiled within, a motif eerily similar to an electrical filament. Known today as the Dendera light, this image defies every notion of what ancient Egyptians were capable of. Mainstream Egyptologists call it a symbol of creation, a purely mythological scene, but engineers and physicists who have studied the reliefs see something else entirely. The shape of the bulb, complete with a narrow neck and rounded end, mirrors the Crookes tube, a 19th-century prototype of the modern light bulb used to study electron beams. The coiled serpent inside could easily represent a glowing filament or plasma discharge, and the so-called lotus flower base resembles an insulator. Even the priests carved beside it appear to be performing maintenance, holding rods or conducting tools. Experimental archaeologists have built replicas of the Dendera device using materials available in ancient Egypt, copper, gold leaf, quartz, and simple electrolytes, and found that when a low current is introduced, the shape can indeed emit light through ionized gas. It worked too well. The implications were enormous. If the Egyptians had access to stable light sources, it explained how deep tombs were decorated without soot marks or mirrors. Yet instead of exploring this possibility, institutions quietly ignored it. No official studies, no museum acknowledgement. When researchers requested high-voltage testing inside the temple, the Egyptian Antiquities Authority banned further experiments, citing religious sensitivity. A single forbidden image on a temple wall suggests that light may have illuminated the ancient world long before Edison. And if so, one must ask, who taught them? The Dendera light stands as a silent witness to a civilization that may have rediscovered technology far beyond its age, only for that brilliance to be buried again in stone and secrecy, the Dropa stones. In 1938, an expedition of Chinese archaeologists, led by Chi Pute, explored the isolated Bayankara Ula Mountains along the Tibet-China border. Inside a series of burial caves, they found rows of small skeletons, strangely proportioned, with large skulls and thin, fragile bodies resting beneath hundreds of circular stone discs. Each disc was perfectly round, about 9 inches wide, and carved with a spiral groove from the edge to the center, as if they had once been used to store information. These relics came to be known as the Dropa stones, and they remain one of the most disturbing mysteries in archaeology. When later examined under microscopes, the grooves revealed microscopic hieroglyphs, tiny symbols etched with uncanny precision. Scientists who attempted to decipher them claimed they told of a people called the Dropa who descended from the sky and became stranded on Earth thousands of years ago. The story was dismissed as fantasy until physicists tested the stones' composition. They contained unusually high concentrations of cobalt and other conductive metals, arranged in a crystalline matrix, suggesting they could once hold or channel electromagnetic energy. Some experiments even recorded faint electrical resonance when current passed through. Then, the records vanished. Chinese authorities classified the findings, removed access to the caves, and denied the stones ever existed. Western researchers who had photographed them reported that their negatives disappeared or were confiscated at customs. One museum in Xi'an that supposedly displayed a few of the discs abruptly removed them in the 1970s, replacing the exhibit with unrelated artifacts. The narrative was erased as thoroughly as the stones themselves. Were the Dropa stones simply ritual objects, or were they remnants of an ancient technology capable of storing information through sound, magnetism, or vibration? Whatever their origin, someone decided humanity wasn't ready to find out. And in that silence, we lost not just artifacts, but perhaps an entire chapter of forgotten science, written in stone and buried in denial. The Shroud of Turin's unexplainable image. In a cathedral vault in Turin, Italy, lies one of history's most studied and disputed artifacts, a linen cloth said to have once wrapped the body of a crucified man. Faintly visible on its surface is a sepia-toned image of a human figure, front and back, burned into the fibers like a photographic negative. Known as the Shroud of Turin, it has been carbon-dated, radiated, photographed, and scanned more than any relic in existence. Yet no one has been able to explain how the image was made. When the shroud was first photographed in 1898, the negative plate shocked scientists. The tones reversed to reveal a lifelike, three-dimensional human face with anatomical accuracy down to the eyelids and beard stubble. No pigments, dyes, or paints were ever found. Under ultraviolet and infrared light, the image sits only on the outermost microfibers, less than 1/5 of a thousandth of a millimeter deep, without penetrating the threads. It's not a painting, not a scorch, not a chemical reaction. NASA's own image processing experts in the 1970s concluded that the image behaves like a burst of radiation encoded in three-dimensional topography, something impossible to reproduce even with laser technology. When researchers proposed that the image might have been created by a brief, intense flash of energy, Vatican officials restricted further testing. Access to the original shroud became nearly impossible. Every new analysis, from blood residue to pollen samples, has been surrounded by controversy, missing data, and quiet withdrawals of results. In the 1980s, a single carbon dating sample claimed it was medieval, but years later, textile experts proved the tested fragment came from a repaired section added centuries after the rest of the cloth. The shroud's mystery endures not just because of its image, but because of what it implies that at some point in history, a process existed that could burn a photographic imprint onto fabric at microscopic depth, without heat, without pigment, without contact. If that process were rediscovered, it could rewrite the history of light itself. But for now, the shroud remains locked in darkness, its secret sealed by faith, politics, and fear of what it might reveal. The Iron Pillar of Delhi. In the heart of New Delhi stands a 1,600-year-old enigma, a 7-meter-tall iron pillar that has defied corrosion, monsoons, pollution, and time itself. Forged around 400 AD, it should have rusted into dust centuries ago, but it hasn't. The Iron Pillar of Delhi remains as smooth and solid as the day it was cast, its surface gleaming with a faint golden patina. To modern metallurgists, it is not just a marvel, it's a violation of natural law. The secret lies in its composition. Modern analysis reveals a purity of iron unmatched by industrial standards, over 99.72% pure, with trace amounts of phosphorus and no manganese or sulfur. Those elements, in just the right balance, created a thin protective film of Mesa white, a crystalline compound unknown in modern engineering until the 20th century. Somehow, ancient Indian metallurgists had mastered a self-preserving alloy that resisted oxidation for more than 1,600 years. Even today, advanced foundries struggle to replicate it without controlled atmospheres and synthetic catalysts. The pillar's creators achieved this with hand furnaces and clay molds. The implications should have revolutionized our understanding of ancient science. But instead of investigating how this formula emerged or who possessed such metallurgical precision, most historical institutions labeled it an accident. The narrative of a one-off miracle was safer than the truth that a civilization more than a millennium ago possessed industrial chemistry centuries ahead of its supposed timeline. When researchers proposed the existence of lost metallurgical texts or advanced guilds that guarded their secrets, the trail was buried. The Indian Archaeological Survey forbade destructive testing. Western journals downplayed results that didn't fit the accepted model of linear progress. Even attempts to simulate the alloy in labs yielded incomplete replicas. The pillar still outperforms them all. If the formula behind the iron pillar had been preserved, humanity might have developed stainless steel 1,000 years early. Imagine what that would have changed. Bridges, ships, engines, entire empires built on metal that never rusts. But the knowledge disappeared. Its secret locked inside a single monument, standing quietly against the Delhi sky, a testament to genius denied and history rewritten. The Voynich Manuscript. Hidden within the archives of Yale University lies a book that has resisted every effort to decode it for over 6 centuries. Bound in calfskin, written in an unknown alphabet, and illustrated with plants that do not exist, the Voynich Manuscript has become the ultimate symbol of forbidden knowledge. An artifact that seems to whisper in a language no one living can understand. Radiocarbon dating places its creation in the early 1400s, yet the ink, handwriting, and illustrations defy every known pattern of medieval scholarship. Hundreds of pages filled with strange looping script flow with mathematical rhythm and linguistic structure, but not a single sentence has ever been translated. Cryptographers from both World Wars, CIA analysts, linguists, and AI models have all failed. Some say it's an elaborate hoax, others suspect a lost scientific codex written deliberately to conceal knowledge too dangerous to reveal. Its sections, botanical, astronomical, biological, and pharmaceutical, hint at advanced understanding. One series of pages shows women bathing in interconnected tubes and chambers resembling anatomical diagrams or chemical apparatus. Another shows planetary alignments and star maps that match not medieval astrology, but precise modern astronomical configurations. The pigments used were sourced from multiple regions, implying a network of trade or patronage unknown to ordinary scribes. Whoever made it had resources and purpose. The book was rediscovered in 1912 by rare book dealer Wilfrid Voynich, who tried for decades to uncover its meaning. But after his death, the manuscript vanished into private collections and resurfaced only under strict institutional control. Today, only facsimiles are released. The original is rarely handled, its chemical composition and binding quietly studied but never publicly disclosed. Why such secrecy over a meaningless book? Because perhaps it isn't meaningless at all. If decoded, the Voynich manuscript might expose knowledge that predates our scientific awakening, medicine, astronomy, or physics encoded in cipher before the Renaissance ever began. And if that's true, then the greatest library of human understanding didn't begin with printing. It began with silence. A silence carefully maintained, even now, by those who decide what humanity is allowed to remember.